All right, all right, all right. Welcome to another episode of the Blue Bloods podcast. B. Holmes, we are officially on episode 31. I know we used to talk about that and kind of go back and forth, like, what episode are we on? I just 31. Went in, I included everything. Every interview, every special episode, like everything, every full episode that we've done, we have reached episode 31. And I did not mean to rhyme just now.
We broke the threshold. We've broken the threshold. We're close to 50. Remember, I think I said this like early in our. I was like, yes. 50. Most podcasts don't make it to 50 episodes. We're more than halfway there, and college football is under 100 days away.
Yes, and what's crazy is we're not even a year old yet.
No, we're not.
If you really think about it, we won't be a year old until week zero.
Week zero.
But we had to hop in today because 4th of July Monday was a crazy day as it pertains to recruiting. So I want to talk about some of the not just 4th of July, but really the whole weekend was a crazy weekend. And we're going to hit a couple of those highlights. And then I want to get into this conference realignment, like what is happening to college football. And then,
my goodness.
I'm sure if you're listening, you're aware by now of the viral clip that's going around all social media outlets of the Texas A&M recruiter talking to some potential A&M recruits, pointing to the suite, saying a lot of money up there, a lot of booster money up there if you decide to come play at A&M. I don't have the direct quote. I'm sure if you're listening, you know which video I'm talking about. So we got to revisit that, him and old Jimbo, that whole saga. But let's start with recruiting, B. Holmes. It was a crazy day on the 4th.
Which was shocking because the 4th of July is the 4th of July. Historically, you know, it's barbecue, ribs, celebrate freedom, fireworks, the whole
People
nine.
are on their computers and devices on 4th of July, typically. Yeah, I'm
exactly. So I don't know. So I know, quite a few people recruited and had some big-time recruits. I don't know if you want to start with the big guy down in Miami, man, and what Cristobal, however I call him Cristobal, what they're doing down there, man, is incredible.
I think it's Cristobal. I know we always end up having this conversation on him too, but I like how you just subtly threw that one back over to me so that I'd have to say the dude's name. But who we are talking about, the number one, some services have him as the number 2 offensive lineman in the country. I think he's the number 1 offensive tackle.
He's number 1 offensive tackle.
2 or 3 offensive linemen in the country.
Yep.
His name is Francis Mauangoe. Francis Mauangoe.
Big Fran.
From IMG Academy, committed to the Hurricanes. Massive catch for Cristobal in this class. I mean, Miami's already been pulling in some guys. I mean, they brought in the big-time Elite 11 quarterback, Rashida,
yeah.
Yeah, him. They've got some skill guys in. I mean, look, it's kind of like what Texas is doing right now, where obviously behind the momentum of Arch Manning, the Longhorns are bringing in like an insane amount of talent. But here's where I'm at with schools like Texas, schools like Miami.
Yeah.
Prove it on the field. Prove it on the field.
Yeah. I think, so, you know, I've done some research on that. So John Ruiz is kind of the big-time booster who's behind this big deal at NIL with Miami.
Okay.
He's a billionaire, former lawyer, turned into something else. He's a part owner of the new MLS team with David Beckham down in Miami. And he's a Miami alum. And I remember reading about him a couple months ago. And he just kind of put this collective together where he was just, which we've said in prior episodes, like, why not go to Miami? I mean, it's one of the top 10 cities in the country. The historical factor of Miami, build a gate around South Florida. I mean, why not? And now with this NIL deal, and this is where it's interesting with recruiting. I think it's going to take us about 3 to 4 years to kind of see how NIL continuously plays an impact, because this is what people don't talk about with this, and this isn't the NIL talk, I'm just saying with the recruiting. This is what people don't think about, Trey, is these guys, these boosters want a return on their investment.
Yes.
This isn't like free money out there. So a billionaire or not, it's I'm paying you to come perform, and I'm interested to see what happens when these guys in Miami and Texas, which have been historically, Texas especially, bring in talent and don't develop them, What's going to start happening with these boosters when they're shelling out millions of dollars every year, but the product on the field isn't worth the $1 million investment?
Well, I'm sure the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to replace the coach, right? Because if I'm investing money in the players, I gotta blame somebody.
Right.
So I didn't invest my money in the wrong players. No, it couldn't be that. It's got to be this guy coaching them. So let's get him out of there. I also wonder what strings might be attached in this unregulated sort of era that we're in, where once that player goes on to get that first round draft money, is there going to be an expectation on the back end for some sort of kickback from some of these NIL? That's where, when we start talking about regulations, I want to make this clear. It's about protecting the athletes. It's not about protecting the universities and the coaches and the NIL guys with money. It's about protecting the athletes from getting taken advantage of or from getting themselves in a situation where later on down the line, there's these strings that are attached to their future money that they could make in the league. So I don't know how that's going to work. I do know they need to get some regulations. But getting back to Miami, the booster you were just referencing, there was a rumor, it was in the last couple of weeks, that quarterback they brought in, now he denied it on Twitter, so of course it can't be true, but allegedly he, I think, got, was it $6 million or something crazy?
Yeah, so something crazy about, but here's the thing, so this is what's, this is all talking heads. Supposedly, though, he did take a lesser deal going to Miami, which I don't believe. But here's the thing, going back to this whole deal with him is this booster, Ruiz, he actually already has gotten tapped by the NCAA. Like the NCAA has already kind of set their sights on him of, hey, kind of what's going on here. So that's why I'm also interested to see like what these collectives are going to start going about it in this way, because the NCAA, we said this when it's first, they did a bad job just with no regulations and letting this go, which that's the NCAA and it's in a whole different nutshell. But I'm interested to see like how they're going to try to put some parameters on this now. But yeah, I mean the kid supposedly he walked away with $6 million. Which here's my thing: if you're the starting quarterback at University of Miami, you should be making a couple $1 million a year. There's a few programs: Miami, Bama, Michigan, USC, Notre Dame, Georgia. You might have a couple more in there, but I'm like, those guys, if you're starting quarterback at those programs, you're minimum.
The ones bringing in billions of dollars.
You should at least be making $1 million a year playing the quarterback position there.
If you're the face of a program that's bringing in $1 billion, when you put it in that perspective, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's, I mean, it's peanuts compared to what they're actually bringing in. So I'm with you on that. What do you think specifically this Francis Maui and Goey?
Yeah.
I said it right the first time. I don't know if I said it right the second time.
Goey.
You bring him in now. What does that do? Does that solidify this 23 class for Cristobal?
I think so. Here's the thing, though. Here's my caveat with this. These guys still have to hold on to these cats. Yeah. The football season hasn't even, which is historical. We know we're recruiting. Kids, flip. Now, I don't know with the NIL age is you sign because there's been a deposit put in your bank. Now that might be something else. I don't know. I think we always say this, like, because right now I don't even know if Bama has a top 10 class. So it's like I'm all about seeing how people finish at the end of the year. Like he's doing great now. Notre Dame's doing great now. But I want to see what happens when this is all said and done. Now, if he keeps this class, I think this solidifies what everybody thinks he can do at Miami.
At least in recruiting.
Exactly.
And we've talked about that. I mean, we did a whole episode on shifting the landscape, and this was before the conference realignment stuff started breaking, which we'll get to that in a second. But talking about Miami and reclaiming South Florida, Cristobal doing his thing with recruiting, but not just recruiting, but being able to develop his recruits. And we talked about, to his credit, when he was at Oregon, he had back-to-back years with a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So 3 years in a row, and that's from the quarterback to the O-line to the D-line. And he was an O-lineman himself, so I think if I'm the top-rated offensive tackle in the country, and I'm already playing my high school ball in the state of Florida.
Right.
I know I can go get as much NIL money as I probably want.
Right.
Why not go to Miami? Why not go play for this guy who seems to be building something special and really bringing the U back? Well, you mentioned Notre Dame. I'm going to get to them in a second. The only other team I really want to talk about from the sort of 4th of July recruiting fireworks is LSU. So they've been kind of quiet since Brian Kelly came to town, other than his viral moments of the whole situation of him.
Accent.
The fake accent, the dancing with the recruits, dancing with the recruit and then losing the recruit to another school. But they have been on a roll. Over the weekend, they signed 5 total players. 4 of them were 4-star defensive linemen. I think one of them's technically listed as an edge rusher, but 4 4-star defensive linemen / edge rushers over the weekend, and 3 guys on the 4th of July alone. Yeah. And I think that if LSU is going to get back to not what they were in 2019, that 2019 team
was unreal.
They kind of remind me of the 95 Cowboys, where people say they just dominated and won despite their coaching because they were so good. And in fact, I was talking to an LSU fan late last week, and I said, what happened? Like, Coach O, I mean, how did the wheels just fall off that bad when 2019 they were untouchable? He said, just shows you how good those players were. And I thought,
that's true.
That's interesting.
It's true.
And he said he thinks Brian Kelly's going to need 2 or 3 years. But either way, Brian Kelly's in town. Had a lot of success at Notre Dame. Couldn't quite ever get over that hump. But that's why he's coming to LSU, because he thinks this is where he can come to win a national championship, which you can. But if you look at those teams, those LSU teams that won titles in the 2000s, won one with Nick Saban, won one with Les Miles, got there and then lost to Alabama. But remember, that team seemed as if they were untouchable until they ran into the freaking brick wall of that Bama defense in the national title game. But they were 13-0 going into that game. Those teams were built on the defensive side of the ball. I remember those teams having just a stout front seven. And then having just some flat-out playmakers on the back end. Guys like Patrick Peterson. Guys like Honey Badger. Guys like, I don't know if you remember, but do you remember he was a safety. He also played baseball. His name, I think, was Chris Jones. I don't know that I think he ended up going to play Major League Baseball, and I think he was caught in the minor leagues. I don't know. I just remember he used to just light people up. But they always had playmakers on the back end, but they had just a stout front seven. And it seems like Brian Kelly is saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come in. We're going to rebuild the trenches, rebuild that front seven to get back to being a championship contending team in Death Valley. What do you think about what they're doing?
I think, and that's how it has to be done. If you look at the state of college football right now, man, it's all about edge rushers. Like, if you have dominant – so, I mean, not to be a homer, but if you look at Michigan's success this past year, you had 2 first-round edge rushers. I mean, Ajabo only goes in the second round because he tears his Achilles. And that shows how talented he was, because he still was a high second-round pick with the torn Achilles.
Yes.
So we had 2 first-round guys coming off the edge, and then we had a first-round safety. Like, I think in the name of the game of the spread offense and what college football is right now, no huddle, like, and I think in the pro game, it's exemplifying this. Like, we've seen the premium on edge rushing guys. I think that's what it's going to take to win at this level, at a high level. My only thing with what Brian Kelly's doing, like, you know, obviously him being at Notre Dame, I've watched him for years. I don't think it was a Notre Dame thing. I think it's a Brian Kelly thing. Like, and then in my personal opinion, he left a really good situation at Notre Dame to a tougher situation at LSU. Because Saban's, he's old young. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. Kirby Smart, I mean, we're seeing what he's doing at UGA, man. He's next one up. You know, Auburn is always good or bad every other year. And then now you're adding OU, you're adding I feel like.
And you know, I got to say this. I have to. But look at what Pittman's doing at Arkansas.
At Arkansas, right? Correct. Arkansas.
I mean, I know I'm a fan, but I mean, you can't deny. True. Yeah,
he's not turning. Like, he's turning the program. So I don't like cool. And here's the thing, and this is what I'm going to say about Brian Kelly and LSU. LSU's never had a problem recruiting. Never. Mm-hmm. They've never. They have a fence around Louisiana. They have a fence around the Houston area of Texas. Mm-hmm. Like most stout kids out of H-Town are normally going to LSU if they go to the SEC. Mm-hmm. So they've never had a recruiting problem. And I wouldn't even say they have a developmental problem because they send dudes to the league every year. I mean, LSU is known. Like, if you want to go to – you're playing in the hardest conference in the country. And I'm saying this as a Big Ten homer. Nick Saban has ran college football for 2 decades. Kirby Smart looks like he's ready to run college football for the next decade. You got Arkansas. You got Florida, which has had a couple off years. But think about those early 2000s, mid-2000s. Good teams. Auburn will surprise you every now and then. Now you're adding OU to them. Kiffin, Ole Miss. Now you're adding OU. Now you're adding. I mean, I think Brian. It's not a coach thing. It's just you're in the hardest conference in college football with the greatest coach ever to coach college football, Nick Saban, in the last 2 years, and Kirby Smart looks like he's on his tail right now. So it'll be interesting to see what Kelly does. I think he has 2 huge hurdles alone in LSU. I mean, in Georgia and Bama, not to mention everybody else he's about to face, man. So, in my opinion, he should have stayed at Notre Dame.
Here's the irony of this whole thing. Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame to go to LSU because he doesn't believe he doesn't believe you can recruit to the level you need to recruit at Notre Dame like you can at a place like LSU. So he goes to LSU, and it's not that he's recruiting bad, but to your point, he's not doing anything over and above what is typical LSU. If anything, you could say right now they're kind of under what their standard is. Then you go back to Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, and he's doing exactly what Brian Kelly said was not possible at Notre Dame as it pertains to recruiting. And that's the next team I want to get into, because just in the last week, they've signed a 5-star edge rusher. I'm looking at it right now. They've signed a 5-star edge rusher or got a 5-star edge rusher, 4-star offensive tackle, like a highly rated 4-star offensive tackle. It looks like he's the 5th-ranked O-lineman in the country. And this is just in the last week. 4th of July, they got one of the top corners in the country. Another top D lineman in the country. I mean, they had a heck of a week. I'm sitting here looking at this. Another 4-star, highly rated 4-star corner.
They're recruiting high, man.
Highly rated 4-star receiver.
And don't forget they got their 2024 QB coming in CJ Carr out of Salem. So they're already working on next year's class.
Well, and I'm not so sure they don't snag. Is it Dante Moore?
Dante Moore. I think he's going to go to Oregon personally, from what I'm hearing. I'm hearing he's probably now. Not to cut you off on this.
Nope. Go.
But with the new conference alignment, I said this actually probably helps Michigan, because he's been a heavy Michigan lean for the longest. He's a Detroit kid. We offered him a 7th grade. I think with USC and UCLA now coming to the Big Ten automatically in 2024 might change his perspective on the Pac-12 is disseminating, and I might as well come, because let's talk about high-level kids want to go to high-level conferences and high-level programs. So
yeah,
but they might still go after Dante. I'm not sure.
I know
and that was the talk though, because Dante and CJ know each other. CJ's up in Saline, Dante's in Detroit. Well, CJ's technically in Ann Arbor, which isn't Saline's not too far from Ann Arbor, and they didn't want to go to the same school because quiet as kept from what I'm hearing in that circle in the Michigan area. CJ is good. He's not Dante good. I think a lot of this is just what I'm hearing. I haven't seen the kid play. A lot of CJ's allure is the fact that he's Lloyd Carr's grandson.
Well,
he's good, but he's, somebody said if he didn't have the pedigree of being somebody's grandson, would he be as highly touted as he is?
Can you think of another quarterback that we could have that same conversation about in the 23 recruiting class? if they didn't have the last name they have, would we be esteeming them in as high as regard as we are?
Oh, yeah. That's been some talk, because he didn't do the camp circuit, and he.
Let me just say something on him for a second. I know we're kind of all over with Arch Manning. In case you're not following along at home, we're talking about Arch Manning. If you look at his high school stats, and I didn't just come up with this on my own. Someone pointed this out somewhere that I saw. His freshman year, his stats were unbelievable. And then if you look each year, it's like they've either leveled out or gotten worse. And then this past season, which, mind you, they're not exactly playing against the top competition in the state of Louisiana either.
No.
I mean, this is like a low-level private school. And that's one of the things that's starting to semi-go viral with non-Texas fans is if you actually watch his highlight clips, look at the guys he's playing against. Look at the kids he's
playing against.
So his stats have sort of worsened each season. And people are starting to wonder if maybe because of who he is, his last name, because of having such a big splash freshman year, did national pundits hype him up so much based off of that everything else since then has just kind of gotten ignored, and it's like, oh, it's Arch Manning. He's a 100 overall rated recruit. He's untouchable. He's unbelievable. He's unstoppable. I've gone on record and said when he recruited to Texas, this adds another layer to the fold, getting back to the development piece. But I thought that's MJ in 45. If Arch is the MJ of this class, him committing to Texas is wearing number 45. Georgia, Bama, Ole Miss, Clemson, any of those I would have looked at as MJ in 23. Him going to Texas, that's 45. I've talked about that enough. But anyways, you just kind of triggered my brain when you were talking about last names and pedigree. And I'm curious to see, though, because Texas is raking it in. Since he's committed, they've brought in tons of talent. I think they're sitting at number 3. But, guys, 18 and 19, they had a top 3 class. And in 2021, it equated to 5 and 7. So if there's any team I want to see it on the field before I believe the hype, it's them.
Man, now that you say that, because I'm thinking about it now, like I haven't heard that perspective, but I have seen the viral clip of everyone saying like he's playing JV kids. Right. And I remember like his freshman year, I think he had a 4-star guy going to LSU. I think the next year he had another 4-star kid that was going. I guess my question is, why would any kid who wants to play quarterback unless you're born and raised in Texas not want to go play for Nick Saban, like as a Bama guy or Kirby Smart or Dabo for that? It's a good perspective, bro. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Sark's an offensive. I think he's great offensively. I don't know. That's a hard thing for me to think. Why Texas? You're right. I think you give me something different to think about when it comes to Arch Manning. But I guess we're about to find out real soon.
We're going to find out. Yeah, I mean, we're going to find out. And if I have to see him and Quinn Ewers side by side with Vince Young and Colt McCoy, I think I'm going to throw up. Like, let's not do that. Like, let's really, really pump the brakes. In fact, I'm going to do a quick plug here. Next week's episode of the Blue Bloods podcast, we have a guest, Jonathan Scott, who actually played on that 05 national championship Texas team. And we recorded it before this recruiting frenzy happened, but he still had some things to say about the state of Texas right now and how it's different compared to when he was there. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to tune in to next week's episode with him. But the bottom line is, something's going on in Austin, and we've both shared our 2 cents on this for the last year now. But all I'll say is I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Let's get back to Notre Dame real quick.
Go for it.
Because not only are they recruiting at this high clip, they've got the number 1 class in the country. I mean, if you look, too, they're Marcus Freeman is really capitalizing on that national brand. They've got kids coming from Texas, from Florida, from California. I mean, really the big three as it pertains. And then he's dipping into like Illinois and Pennsylvania and that little pocket where I think one of the top rated linemen is from Illinois. Scooped him up. I feel like right now all eyes are on Notre Dame.
Of course.
And not because of their recruiting, even though that's helping. It's because of everything that's happening with the conference realignments. So just to bring everybody up to speed, the Pac-12 is essentially
done. It's decimated.
And here's the ironic thing about this. I keep bringing a lot of irony in this episode. Let me choose carefully how I say this. I don't think this could have been avoided.
No.
But what the Pac-12 had the opportunity to do was secure themselves from leaving this whole situation empty-handed. Here's what I mean. Back in January, a vote went up to expand. And it's my understanding that it was either everyone needed to agree on an expansion plan, and they had multiple 12-team models.
Yeah.
That pretty much all of them awarded the top 6 conference champions an automatic bid. Which, if you're in the Pac-12, whether you have USC or not, your conference champion will be in that top 6.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Because you're still going to be over the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, the Conference USA,
right?
At least you would hope, right? The Pac-12 and the ACC voted no. And I don't think it was a deal where it was like an official vote yes or no, end all be all, or it was if we can come to an agreement on this, let's move forward with it. But if not, we'll continue the conversation.
Right.
So the Pac-12 and ACC voted no. And what's crazy is they voted no, I think a lot of because they had this alliance in the works with the Big Ten. So the playoff doesn't get expanded, as we all know.
Yes.
No automatic bids for the current Power 5 conferences. And then the Big Ten pulls the okie doke on the Pac-12 and swipes USC, UCLA, and what looked like was going to be Oregon and Washington. But now, and we need to get to this in a minute, it looks like they may be going to another conference, or at least they're being courted by another conference.
Yep.
And it's just ironic that had they voted to expand the playoff and secure an automatic bid for their conference, it's not that this still wouldn't have happened. It's not that the USC and the UCLAs wouldn't have still jumped ship for that big check. But at least when all the smoke clears, because it ain't even close to being over.
Oh, no.
As a conference, you can at least say, all right, I've got an automatic bid in my left hand here. I can use this to try to go bring in some other teams. And regardless of who I bring in, at least I know in this playoff format, I have an automatic bid. Whereas now, what's seeming to take shape is the Big Ten and SEC are going to be holding all the cards, holding all the power. They're not going to vote to give a conference like the Pac-12. No, they want to get as many automatic bids for their own conference as possible. So anyways, I say that, all of that, to talk the long way to come back to Notre Dame. All eyes are on them because really they're in a very unique situation where what decision they make right now
shifts everything.
Shifts everything.
Shifts everything.
What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, because we're not fully pivoting to conference realignment yet, because I have something to say about what you said about the Pac-12. Because I mean, we can. Somebody. Okay, so before I'm going to say something let me touch on Notre Dame, and then I'll switch back to conference alignment, because I want to answer your question. Because I did talk to somebody who knows something about this conference realignment.
Okay.
The thing about Notre Dame, I think, is actually very unique. Now, we've been saying this, I think, and I say we, and I'm painting with the broad brush, I'm saying college football fans across the country for years have been saying Notre Dame just needs to pick a conference. The only people who like Notre Dame being independent are Notre Dame fans. That's it. Everyone else is like, you're scared, you're running, pick a conference, it's better for the conference. I think, and I believe their director or commission, whoever it is at Notre Dame, I don't know what their title is, actually came out publicly and was like, we have a decision to make, because being independent might not be the best deal for Notre Dame anymore. Now, we know what this really means is it's about dollars. It's about dollars. Notre Dame loves their independent deal with NBC. They like the revenue. I think they don't have a choice that they're going to have to pick. Maybe they can be independent for 1 or 2, but it's going to cost them in the long run. And I think if they have foresight to see that, they're going to just have to make a choice. Now, I know based upon, because I did some research because I figured we'd talk about this, based upon the COVID deal, they signed this deal with the ACC.
Right.
Which I think is part of the fine print is if they do decide to join a conference, the ACC has like first rights or something. But we know money talks and they can buy their way out of just about anything, because there's no way in heck that Notre Dame will go to the ACC when the Big Ten and SEC are doing what they're doing. I think if I'm Notre Dame, because it's about dollars, and let's talk, the people who make these decisions, they care about revenue.
Yep.
If it's about that, and I'm going to take an even more step back. Notre Dame also wants to be seen as prestigious, academically elite, as well as athletically elite. What conference gives you, because Notre Dame sees themselves as like as close as an Ivy as possible. What other conference can give you the most money, gives you the academic prowess, and gives you the athletic prowess as well? That's seen nationally, and that's, to me, that's the Big Ten.
Big Ten, yeah.
It's the Big Ten. Geographically, it makes sense. At this point, it doesn't matter geographically with how we're moving, but the Big Ten still has the highest revenue earning. Their deal is up for restructuring, I think, in like another year, so they're getting ready to start restructuring. And now, this is where I think Notre Dame makes its pivot. The Big Ten was already talking about $1 billion in revenue before USC and UCLA. Now with USC and UCLA, they're approximating 1.2 billion minimal. This is minimal revenue. So if I'm Notre Dame, the Big Ten fits, especially because where we're going with conference realignment, which I think that's what they need to do. It makes sense. It's been something which I didn't know historically, Notre Dame tried to in the 40s to join the Big Ten. The Big Ten, it's so stupid. It's why this didn't work. It was Notre Dame and like Illinois or Northwestern, somebody. Notre Dame just didn't send their representative to the meeting. The Big Ten got offended and said, fine, we don't want you. So this could have been ended a long time ago, right? It's a bunch of dudes in the
simpler time.
Yeah, simpler times. There wasn't $1 million revenue deals. It was just like, hey, this is for academics and scholar athletes.
Yes.
So I think if I'm Notre Dame, just go to the Big Ten. I think there's some way, you can rope NBC into that. Maybe NBC and Fox join together and figure out a way, because NBC is not going to want to lose their money. We know that for a fact. So I think that's what it's going to come down to, is what's going to happen with their NBC deal. Can NBC get in on some of this revenue money, or what's their buyout? Because this is a big deal for them with Notre Dame football.
Right.
But I think if Notre Dame has to make a choice, man, the Big Ten to me makes the most sense. Now, it wouldn't shock me if they picked the SEC, but I think the Big Ten fits their brand more than the SEC does.
No doubt. And not that this even matters anymore, but it also geographically makes more sense.
Right.
But geographically means nothing
Got
now
thrown
in
out the
college
window
football,
now.
so whatever. You also put them in there with a couple of rivals.
Yep.
USC and Michigan, and I think Michigan State even.
Michigan State, kind of.
Kind of, sort of. So here's what I wonder. If they go Big Ten, that certainly would solidify teams like Miami, Clemson, FSU, and maybe even like a Virginia Tech trying to get in the SEC.
They're trying to get in somewhere. They're trying to get in somewhere.
Because I felt like when this initially happened, because when this first was reported with USC, UCLA headed to the Big Ten, it was quickly followed up with Washington and Oregon are following.
Yep.
So then initially the knee jerk is, okay, well, then that means the SEC is going to go after the Florida schools plus a couple others like Clemson and Virginia Tech. And you're just going to have 2 super conferences that if that happens, here's how I've resolved in my mind as a fan. Is it going to destroy college football? Probably. But to maintain fan interest at this point, just run it like the NFL playoffs, right? Where you've got 2 super conferences, you get the top 6 from each super conference, have a wild card weekend, have a divisional round, have a championship round, then have your national championship game with the winner essentially of the SEC versus the Big Ten, which if all of this shapes out that way, that would be the 2 best teams in all of college football anyways. So that's one option. But if Notre Dame were to join the ACC, and I know it's all going to come back to money, but does that allow the ACC to keep those Florida schools, especially if Miami is getting ready to be on the up and up? Then you've already got Clemson, who they had a down year, but
they'll be back.
They'll be back. If Florida State can get their stuff together, which they've had some a pretty big commit, I think, on Tuesday, but if Florida State can get it together and then sort of ride that 4-headed monster of Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Notre Dame to maintain this elite status, kind of keep things balanced, and then maybe, just maybe, the Big 12 can patchwork a conference over here to at least just try to stay relevant. Right. That's where I feel like all eyes are on Notre Dame, because where I initially thought Miami, Clemson, FSU, okay, they're out, they're done. Wait, hold on. Pump the brakes. Maybe not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would say. Maybe everyone's waiting to see what Notre Dame does. And then to me, that's
a good perspective.
The wild card is Big 12. How big of a check do they have to write to get a team like Notre Dame to come in and be the flagship school of the conference? That ain't going to happen.
No.
So what's the only other option that could potentially legitimately play out for Notre Dame? They stay independent.
Now, I like the ACC option because they would be the big dogs on the block, which dollars talk, but so does power.
Yeah.
So does power. I could see that. I could see them going, we're going to go to ACC, stay with Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and that gives you 4 quote-unquote blue blood programs, i.e. Clemson not really being one, but now being the juggernaut that they are.
A new money.
A new money blue blood, and being like, hey, if Florida State and Miami return, that 4 can go against any other conference's top 4. Like, I can take that 4, and I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but I'll take that 4, and they can play Bama, Georgia, LSU, and whoever your 4th best team's going to be. They can play Michigan, Ohio State, USC, and Penn State, or whoever your 4th would be. Like, because that's what's going to happen when these conferences. There's always a top 4.
Right. Well, and like we've talked about in the past, the reason why, if those, particularly Florida State and Miami, if they come back, the reason why they'll be able to compete with Bama's and Georgia's is because they're going to have
all the talent.
That's right. They're gonna have. That means they will have kept the talent in state that's going to Bama and Georgia.
That's a good perspective.
So that's a scenario.
I like that.
Notre Dame goes to the ACC.
I actually like that.
Well, then so then the SEC, you still have Bama, Georgia, Texas, OU coming in. Right. I'm just using them because they're blue bloods. I don't actually think they're gonna be
who they once were.
Who they think they're gonna be in the SEC.
Yeah.
But for name recognition, brand recognition, money, dollars, all of that, you've got them. ACC would be Miami, Florida State, Notre Dame, Clemson. Big Ten, you've got Michigan, Ohio State, USC, and
you got Penn State there.
Penn State. I mean, you can
piecemeal whoever your 4th best team's going to be.
That's right. Now that leaves the Big 12, who right now the Big 12 is making some moves. So they're trying to slide in and essentially put the nail in the coffin on the Pac-12 while also keeping themselves alive. The latest reports are that they're trying to bring in Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon, Utah, and Washington, I believe. Oh, and Colorado. I'm sorry, it's 6 teams. It's Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado were the 4, and then it was reported that no, it's actually 6. They're also trying to bring in Oregon and Washington. So if they could swing that, let me lay out a potential Big 12 for you, and I want to know, how do you think this measures up with what we just discussed, the scenario we just discussed? So basically you'd have 3 divisions in the Big 12. And if you played a championship game, you just have to take the top 2 overall. But you group it in the Big 12 West, which would be Arizona, Arizona State, BYU, Oregon, Utah, and Washington. That's not a bad cohort.
It's not a bad. Yeah, it's not.
It's not elite. It's not elite, but it's not bad. Big 12 East. Cincy, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, West Virginia, UCF. Again, not elite, but it's not bad.
It's decent.
Big 12 Southwest. Baylor, Colorado, Houston, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU. Again, not elite, but it's not bad. So that in and of itself, does it maintain the power conference prestige?
Big 12, if they do that, the Big 12 essentially just becomes like a mixture of the American Conference and the Pac-12. Like it gives me it becomes the new Pac-12, essentially. Like how we view the Pac-12 now is, if that turns into that, it's just how the Big 12 just replaces the Pac-12 and how we view it. Which I think with that type of teams, that type of pedigree, so it's not elite, like you said, but it's good. Every now and then they'll give you a really good team. I think they get to keep their power reference per se, but they're the little brother on the block. But I think that's good enough if you look back at it, like you said, so to me, those final 3 that you named are the biggest ones. If they can lock in Oregon, if they can lock in Utah, and if they can lock in UW, I think better than Arizona, Arizona State, and whomever. If you can just get those 3, I like the Big 12. They actually don't have to add those 6. If they add those 3, I think that's enough. Because you said some teams that I completely forgot about. TCU, we can see with Sonny Dykes. And we got to remember the TCU in the early 2000s with Andy Dalton and those guys, good, went to the Rose Bowl, like good team. And if Sonny Dykes can recruit high there, that's great. U of H, they've been on the up and up for some time, but it's like they're arriving. Cincy, Fickle, it looks like Fickle's going to stick. I think he likes Cincinnati. I think he likes the move to the Big 12. I think he likes that there's more revenue coming in. That's good. Baylor, come on, like what they're doing down there in that program. I think if you just snag the top 3 that's kind of left out of the Pac-12, well, name-wise, I think that's good enough for the Big 12 where you're like, because I don't scoff at Oregon. I don't scoff at Utah. Clearly what we just saw in the Rose Bowl this year, man, and what they did, went toe-to-toe with Ohio State, was amazing. And they play tough defense. They got a good enough offense. We know what Oregon's known for, and especially with the new coach they just got out of Georgia. Like, if he does, we think he can do at Oregon. Trey, that's not bad. And they don't. And in my opinion, if they not grab those 3, they don't need Arizona. Like, I would toss them and say, Mountain West, y'all can have them. Like, technically, the Big 12, in my opinion, doesn't need them. They just need to get the remaining Big 3 out of the Pac-12.
But I think we're also entering a time where there's going to be something to be said for strength in numbers.
Yep, true.
So if you could get an Arizona, because look, it's not this elite blue blood history, but Arizona has a good football history, and they're definitely going to add value on the basketball side of things.
Which is still a revenue-generating sport.
Yes. Arizona State same type of deal. They don't have this elite, illustrious football history, but they've got some history. I mean, Jake Plummer, I remember the era Jake Plummer, and I mean, they had a squad, just like Arizona had a squad when they had the defense with Teddy Bruschi, and I can't remember who else was on that team, but I mean, they were like a top 5 team at one point in time. The team here that I think could really start to become more and more nationally prominent is BYU.
Oh,
they have a history.
They do.
Right? Now, most of their history came as an independent. And whether you agree with it or not, they have a national championship.
They do.
As a WAC conference team, which is why a lot of people disagree with it. But I think BYU is a team that could become more and more elite in this type of framework. Of course, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you've got Cincy, Central Florida with what Malzahn's starting to build. We've seen what they can do, at least as an American athletic team. I don't know, man. The more and more I look at it, the more I like it. I think the big difference, I like your comparison where you said it's kind of a hybrid of the American and the Pac-12. And then with this format, it'll pretty much replace how we view the Pac-12 now. The big difference is they're just missing a true blue blood.
Well, here's what I think I want to say to this. And this is my point about the whole thing, why I actually agree with the realignment. I've really been thinking about it. My initial perspective was I hated it. But this is why I'm liking it. And if your boys in the Big 12 can actually make this move, this is why I love it. College football has an exciting game problem. This is what I mean. And I'm stealing this from Colin Cowherd, so I got to give credit. It wasn't my original thought. I'm stealing this from him. But he made such a valiant point. He was like, opening week in college football this year has 95 football games. There's only 2 that we care about seeing. He's not lying. And I forget which games they were opening weekend, but there was only
3 because it's whoever your team's playing.
Right. And then the other 2. And then he was like, the next week, there's 115 games playing. We only care about 2, Bama and Texas and whatever the other elite game.
I think Georgia, Miami might be
Georgia,
playing.
something like that. I think if the Big 12 can pull that off, they now give us what we really care about in college football terms. Because think about this. Like, we care about what time our team plays. So for me, this is Brandon Holmes. I know Michigan plays at noon. I don't care who they play. I'm going to watch. Normally, I sleep past the 3 o'clock game, which with my current work schedule is going to work. I'm like, no game rarely comes on the 3 o'clock slot. Then we care about the night game slot. So we really only look for, like you said, 3 games a week. With this conference realignment, and if the Big 12 can pull this off, which I agree, now there's strength in numbers, you're now giving us what we want. I would watch BYU versus Utah. I will watch Oregon versus Utah because we saw what happened this past year. I would watch. I'm trying to think who else is in that conference. If Baylor gets good again, well, if they stay good, like what are they are? Baylor, Oregon, that's a dang good game.
Absolutely.
Baylor, Utah, that's a dang good game. If Sonny Dykes can turn TCU, Baylor, that's a really good game. Oh wait, and I haven't even touched Cincinnati. Oregon versus Cincinnati, defense versus high-powered offense. I watch that. Utah versus. I'd watch that. That gives me some at least 7 high quality games out of a 13 game season. So that now when I'm looking at it, the Big 12, if they want to stay relevant, they have to make, because if you go to the same thing what you said, if Notre Dame, if they go to the ACC, you split the conference, and Miami and Florida State gets good, I know I get the traditional Miami versus Notre Dame quote unquote rivalry. We know that whole fiasco, the history. That's a good game. Notre Dame versus Florida State. That's a dang good game. Notre Dame versus Clemson. That's a dang good game. Miami versus Clemson. That's a great game. You go to the Big Ten now. Michigan, UCLA, great game. Ohio State, UCLA, amazing game. Like, I think the Big 12, if they want to, because dare I say, whatever Notre Dame does affects the whole landscape.
It does.
But if the Big 12 can steal Washington, Oregon, and Utah at the least, they now, I think, push themselves in pole position to at least have a little bit to bring to the table and say, yes, we don't have the traditional blue blood, but we have 7 or 8 marquee games this year that people who love the sport would actually watch.
Yeah, I mean, give me a BYU UCF. Let's market this as the knockoff brand of Miami Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's the great value brand that you're still going to eat. You're still going to get it because it's affordable and it kind of tastes the same, even though it tastes a little different. Okay, so here's another thought on all that. With this format for the Big 12, they could literally fill every time slot on the Saturday agenda.
Exactly.
And here's what that does. Because it's funny, you as a Big Ten fan, how you just kind of laid out your watch plan for Saturdays. SEC fans, we typically don't care about the morning slate.
Right.
We start gearing up for that 2:30 slate
to late slate.
And then into the evening.
Yep.
And then every single true college football fan finds themselves every Saturday around midnight watching whatever Pac-12 game is left on. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep to Utah, BYU, or how many times I've fallen asleep to Hawaii, Arizona. You put the Big 12 in that slate as well.
Yep.
Because you can fill your morning games with the East Coast.
Yep.
You can fill your primetime or afternoon, evening games with the Southwest, and you can fill your late games with the West Coast. And at some point in time, you're going to get viewership just by default, right? Like, what's going on? Oh, wait, so you mean I can watch this, what I feel is kind of a lame matchup over here, or I don't know, I could check out, to your point, Oregon, Baylor. I think I want to watch that.
Watch that.
And it's at 10 p.m. Man, I might actually stay up for that.
Exactly.
I'm pulling for the Big 12 to survive because I think it will be what's best for college football. I don't think the 2 super conferences holding all the cards is good for everybody at all. Not for that. Not for the college football purist. Now, like I said, I've kind of resolved in my mind the format that would satisfy me, which is, okay, if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to put all the top teams or all the blue bloods, all the elite programs in these 2 conferences, okay, then let's just compete for the top 6 to make the playoff from each conference, and let's run it like the NFL playoffs. Okay, I'm looking at the time. We've got one other thing to talk about. We don't have to, though, this episode. It's just with the Jimbo and, the recruiter. I mentioned at the top of the episode, he's showing him the stadium.
We see the viral clip. Yep.
Yeah, what do you say? There's a lot of money.
Suites, a lot of money, those booster suites up there.
If you come play here. I'm just going to say one thing on this. This is a non-story.
Of course.
If on National Signing Day, Jimbo handles it the exact opposite of how he chose to handle it.
Of course.
Because all he had to do when he was first asked about this $30 million NIL budget to bring in this unbelievable recruiting class, all he had to do was very calmly go, oh, man, I don't typically respond to message board rumors, which, let me remind everybody, this all started as a message board rumor. Literally, a message board that you can either sign up for free, you can sign up for $5 a month, and any armchair quarterback can go in and type and contribute whatever they want. We've all been a part of them, okay? So that's where it started. All he had to do was say, I don't typically respond to message board rumors, but I will say that at the Texas A&M University, we're going to advocate for every NIL opportunity for all of our student athletes within the confines and rules and regulations of the NCAA. And if he responds to it that way, it's a non-issue. Unfortunately, what did he choose to do? He reacted in his first interview. Then, literally, there's 3 things you should never do when you've been accused of something. Whether you did it or not, if you want people to believe you, there's 3 things you should never do.
Right.
And Jimbo did all 3 of them in his press conference. You should not react emotionally. You should not insult people's intelligence. And you should not point the finger at somebody else. And he did all 3 of those in his signing day press conference. He got emotional about it and adamantly denied it. He insulted everyone's intelligence by suggesting that the fact that A&M just all of a sudden pulls in this amazing class because of College Station and the academics and the hard work of the coaches. Look, I'm not dismissing all of that, but like, don't insult our intelligence. We know that's not why you just signed the highest rated recruiting class in ever in history. And then don't point the finger at somebody else. And that's exactly what he did. He points it. He implied it. It was very softly. He softly implied that everyone should go look into what Nick Saban is doing. He didn't say his name or anything like that initially. It wasn't until Nick Saban about a month ago addressed him by name. Then that's when he came out. Oh, he thinks he's God. I'll tell you what, you go look at what he's doing, yada, yada, yada. So the 3 things you should never do, right? I mean, think about it, B. Holmes. Think about a pastor gets accused of having an affair on their wife. If they go up on stage that next Sunday, I can't believe y'all will believe this rumor about me. Could you believe I would actually do something like that? Oh, I mean, come on. And you think if I was going to cheat, I would cheat with someone like that? And everybody in the congregation is thinking, well, I mean, she does look better than your actual wife. So yeah, probably. And the fact that he's getting so wound up, well, y'all need to be looking at what some of these elders are doing on the weekends instead of looking at me. Now, now everyone's going, okay, this guy probably did whatever he's being accused of doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I agree wholeheartedly with you because now coaches are being public about it. Ryan Day at Ohio State openly came out and said, Ohio State, we need about I think he said $13 million budget to compete with NIL. You know, Jim Harbaugh's been open about it. You know, he's like, we're not going to do a pay-for-play deal, but we do have collectives in place to ensure that, you know, which has been Michigan's whole recruiting pitch is we're not against it, but everything you can get at all these other schools, we're just not going to give it to you up front, but you can earn it here at the university. I mean, every coach has been addressing it. It's happening. It's a thing that we're adjusting to. You know, we're not really allowed to comment about much of it because the school can't set it up. I believe that's the NCAA rule. Like the school can't create, they can't be the negotiator between the deals. So it's simple. I think it's just dumb. I think Jimbo should have just shut up about it. I think, I feel bad for this guy, whoever leaked the video, because he's definitely probably about to get fired.
Was it a recruit?
I think it might have been a recruit or a recruit's family or something like, you know, which is, listen, I come from the old days when you were getting recruited with stuff, man. It'd be like, yo, no pictures, no phones. Like, you know, but that's part of the era they're in now. I feel more bad about the guy, the coach. He did what he was, you know, he did what every coach in America is doing right now, especially at big time programs, you know. No one's not telling these kids how much money you can make because that's what these kids are all about now. You know, they're about that. So I feel bad for him that a conversation that was private per se, and is part of their recruiting pitch, which we know it is, which is part of every coach's recruiting pitch right now. I don't care what anyone's saying, even at Michigan. NIL is being talked about because that's what these kids want to hear about. It just sucks that it got exposed, and now this dude's probably losing his job because Jimbo now looks dumb, and you know, somebody has to pay the price for it, and it definitely ain't going to be Jimbo.
Well, and here's what's crazy. You could easily justify what the coach said, right? You could easily just spin it to mean, oh, he was just referring to all the A&M boosters. They sit in those suites, and they give so much back to the A&M football program so that if you choose to come play here, you benefit from the money that they donate.
Right.
That's an easy explanation.
It's an easy spin.
The problem is that is no one's first reaction or thought. And because we are in a society now where perception is everything, Well, the perception that's surrounding this viral clip was created by how Jimbo reacted to a message board rumor.
Right.
So, yeah, to your point, poor guy's probably going to lose his job. I hope he doesn't.
I hope he doesn't.
Because you can spin it. I mean, he didn't do anything illegal.
He didn't.
Right? What he did, though, was just validated what everyone already knows, which is that
hey, we
Jimbo,
pay for play here.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is no different than any other school in the SEC.
Anywhere.
Let's just be clear.
I mean, come on. And that's not just since
football.
NIL.
Yeah, right.
That's not just since NIL.
The history of college football is known for the bag man. Like, let's just be honest.
I mean, come on. Oh, man. Well, man, that's it. Hey, if you're listening right now, thank you. We're back. We're going to try and get this thing rolling from now all the way till week 0. And then week 0, we'll have our regular weekly show going. Now, it may not always be me and Brandon doing just a digest of, current events. We do have some interviews lined up, just some tremendous stories. If you haven't listened to last week's episode with Vincent Valentine, the former Nebraska Cornhusker and Super Bowl champion with the Patriots, I would highly encourage you to go listen. Next week, as I said, we've got Jonathan Scott lined up. And then the week after that, we've got another guy lined up. I'm not going to say his name because we haven't officially recorded him yet. But we do have the session scheduled where we will interview him. So it's going to kind of be a combination of those things from now till week 0. Please subscribe, give us a rating. I want to shout out our listeners because now on both Spotify and Apple, if you type in Blue Bloods, like we're one of the
first
top
to pop up. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's because people are listening and rating and things like that. It helps. I don't really understand algorithms and all that, but
it helps.
Whatever it
leave
is.
A comment, leave a rating, subscribe, download us on Spotify, Apple Pods, leave a comment, leave a rating. All that stuff helps boost us up in the search engine, which obviously continues to help us do what we do here at Blue Bloods.
That's right. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe. We'll see you next time.
Peace.